I'd like to welcome everybody today to Tuesday, February 1st, 2022, pre-agenda meeting. For those out in the audience, please silence your mobile devices. And that being said, I better double check mine as well. Madam Clerk, at this time, we have all county commissioners present. We have our Deputy County Manager and Finance Director. We have our county attorney, and we have our county manager, all in attendance. And I will remind those that please, when you come up front to speak, speak clearly. Make sure the microphone is activated for those listening on YouTube. And also, if you feel more comfortable, you can put your mask to the side when you're speaking, and just please put it back on when you are done. Gentlemen, the first item on today's agenda is the approval of the agenda. Gentlemen, you've had an opportunity to review the agenda. Are there any corrections to it?
Motion to approve the agenda is printed.
Thank you, Commissioner Abley. All those in favor of the approval of today's agenda, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Moving on to item number 3, presentations. Our first presentation is presented by Caitlin Settlemeyer, our Pet of the Month, our Animal Services Director, or, you've morphed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Animal Services will be here at the regular meeting to present a dog and cat as Pet of the Month in need of their forever homes.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item number 2 under presentations, MMFP, recognition of Miss Morganton Festival Scholarship Pageant winners. And that will be presented by Madam Clerk as well. Keeping you busy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm filling in for Michelle Gregory. She's the director of the Miss Morganton Festival Scholarship Pageant. She could not be here today. She picks up her kids at school at this time of day, so I'm filling in for her. This is a request to recognize 5 young ladies that were in the Miss Morganton Festival Scholarship Pageant. They range from ages 7 to 24. They reside in North Carolina, of course, Burke County, and some in the city of Morganton. They are committed women who are doing good things and serving as community ambassadors for not only our city and towns, but the county as a whole. And they will be here at the regular meeting to be recognized. And I just wanted to call out their names. We have Victoria Smith, Laney Reese, Ashlyn Robinson, Marley Johnson, McKinley Lale, and I'm sure there'll be a bunch of proud mamas and daddies and grandparents here to attend the meeting and see you all recognize them.
Gentlemen, any comments for Kay?
I did have one question. I got this, and I'm a little confused sometimes or disappointed when I didn't get to go to the pageant. So how do they promote this that we know that it's going on? I guess it's in the paper.
It's part of the Historic Morganton Festival, which I don't think happened last year because of COVID, but it's part of the annual festival in the fall.
Okay.
But I'll be sure to try to make you aware of it this year, so you can be sure to attend.
10-4, thank you.
Any other comments on this item, gentlemen? There being none, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item number 3, briefing on release of Pisgah and Nanahala Forest Plan, presented by our good friend from the U.S. Forest Service District, is Nicholas Larson. Nicholas, nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet y'all. Good afternoon. I am excited to be here. I don't think I've been in this, I've been in this room in the past 3 years, but I haven't been in front of all y'all for a while, so glad to be here. So I'm Nick Larson. I'm the district ranger on the Grandfather Ranger District here on the Pisgah National Forest. I manage the National Forest land essentially south of the Blue Ridge Parkway on over from the Black Mountains to about Lenore. Here in Burke County, that's about 49,000 acres, or 15% of the county's land base. So we've got a good chunk of property that we're keeping an eye on for y'all. I'm super excited to be here today to talk about a little bit about our forest plan. Our forest plan was released the other Friday. This forest plan is our land management plan that basically, it does guide all of our actions over the next 15 to 25 or 30 years. So any of the activities that are happening across the national forest, the guidance for those, the direction for those is coming out of this plan itself. So that's everything from our trails to watershed protections to the actions that we're taking to sustain our actual forest resources and protect the communities around us from wildfire and insect and disease and things like that. There's been a considerable amount of time. I was just telling Ed over here that the first public meeting that we had on the forest plan was about 8 years ago. So we've had about 8 years of listening to the public, of working with many of our partners to get this thing right and get it in a position where it's going to be serving the interest of the American people and our communities here. Throughout the plan itself, you'll see 4 unifying themes, and that's connecting people to the land, sustaining healthy ecosystems, providing clean and abundant water, and partnering with others. And as you guys know, and as Ed can talk about here on the Grandfather and in the Pisgah National Forest, the partnerships that we have, not only with our community members, but with our NGOs and with our neighboring agencies is really the backbone of our success. I'm not gonna lie to you, this plan is incredibly long. You're looking at just the final documentation is well over 2,000 pages. So the fundamental thing that I wanted to present to you guys here is there's a 12-page briefing in there that runs through the basic understandings of what's in that forest plan, and offer up if you guys or anybody in the public has any questions about what's in the plan or where to find it, don't hesitate for a minute to reach out to me. I'm happy to explain to you kind of where we've reflected y'all's interest, where we've reflected some of the comments that we've heard from folks, and make sure that you understand what's on the docket for the next several years. Just a quick synopsis of what the plan actually does. The forest plan breaks the national forest into different geographic areas, trying to identify what are these place-based themes, what's important within a given area, whether that's here in Burke County and the areas surrounding Linville Gorge, or whether that's up on the Balds on the Appalachian District. So it breaks that down, and then it breaks it into smaller units, really similar to like county zoning. So where are agricultural areas? So where are the places that on the forest, instead of an agricultural area or a residential area, you'd have things like where's the interface? Where are the places that people are most likely to go out into the national forest, enter into it, whether it's by a road or a trailhead or something like that? And how is that management different than, say, the general national forest, where we might be managing for clean water, we might be managing for some wildlife habitat? And there's 17 total different management areas in there. So you've got everything from how people are interfacing with the forest to congressional wilderness designations. We have wild and scenic rivers. There's an experimental forest down in the Pisgah district outside of Brevard. So really a wide range of things. This particular plan, there's one unique thing that I'd like to point out to y'all, and this is reflected in that briefing paper. But what sets this plan different than many of the other plans you might see in other parts of the country or our old plan from the 1980s is it sets up objectives in a tiering system. So there's tier 1 objectives and there's tier 2 objectives. And the fundamental concept of what those tier 1 objectives are is they're what the federal government believes that we can accomplish on our own. So what, with the allocations that we get from Congress and with the support that we have internally, here's about how much prescribed burning, about 20,000 acres a year across the national forest is how much prescribed burning we might be able to get accomplished. The tier 2 objectives spell out what we can do with our partners. So if we're working really closely with the North Carolina Forest Service, if we're working really closely with your emergency management, with organizations like the Nature Conservancy, how much more do we think we can get accomplished in those different areas as a tier 2 objective? And as the plan spells out, that's looking at anywhere from 20 to 40,000 acres. Likewise, we've got those lined out for nearly every metric you might think of forest accomplishments, whether it's road management, timber production, wildlife habitat improvement, replacement of culverts, and placement of aquatic organism passages. So all those are reflected in this sort of tier 1 and tier 2 objective, and following that theme of how we partner with others. So the plan is released, it's available. I did not send the whole plan to y'all because, like I said, it's long, but there's links there, and you're welcome to visit the website, the National Forest of North Carolina website, to access that. This is the final plan and a draft decision. The last step that we're in right now is an objection period. So this is the final opportunity for anybody that has commented on the plan in the past to say, Nick, you didn't get it right. You didn't follow through with our comments the way that we expected. If everything goes the way that it's anticipated, we should be at a final decision and ready to start implementing this new plan the summer of 2022. That's the quick and dirty of the National Forest in North Carolina, or the Nanahala and Pisgah National Forest Plan. I'll kind of open it up and ask if there's any questions, and just remind folks, if you do want to see something specific, don't hesitate for a minute to reach out to me. I can point you to exactly where it's at in that plan.
I will say, Nicholas, that's a good way to sum up 2,000 pages without sending it to us. So, gentlemen, at this point, I'll open it up for any questions or comments you may have for Nicholas.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions. The first one has to do with all those jobs, 3,280 employees. And does the harvesting of the timber cover the cost of those employees, or how do those employees get paid?
So the 3,200 jobs created is based on all the resources on the National Forest. So that's not just looking at the timber resources, but that's also looking at outdoor recreation, that's looking at outfitters and guides, hunting guides and things like that. So it's a statement of the economic impact of the National Forest on your community. Does that address the first part of your question?
Yes, and is there enough income generated from the sale of products, et cetera, to cover the labor costs?
Yeah. So to follow that up, when we have our timber sales, we're obligated by law to ensure that the timber that we produce, the timber that we sell off of federal lands, that it's viable, that it can go to a market, it can pay its way out of the woods to be delivered to an actual mill, and that it generates enough receipts that we have the funds to reforest that then as well. So it's not just being able to sell that timber, but being able to sell that timber, get it to a mill, and if there's a requirement to reforest that area or plant that area, we also have to account for that.
Okay, you lead me right to my next question. Is all the area allowed to be harvested in one form or another? No, sir. If you'll reference the map here, this is a gross overstatement, but predominantly the areas here that are showing up as green and yellow are those that would be allowable for timber harvest. If you'll see the big gray blob in the middle, that's Linville Gorge Wilderness. I'm sorry, I'm getting away from the mic. That's Linville Gorge Wilderness area. That area is congressionally withdrawn from timber harvest, so we're not able to manage timber in those areas. But for the most part, in those green and yellow areas, we're able to manage them. Okay. Well, it's my opportunity. Can I give you my 2-cent
Yes, sir.
opinion? I have always advocated that timber is like any other product. At a certain age, it reaches its max potential. Humans reach a max potential. Then we begin to go downhill. So does timber. And I've always argued that there's no reason that as bad as we need lumber products for building houses, et cetera, that in my opinion, that it could be successfully harvested with damage in the least possible to the rest of the forest. And that's just my opinion. My final question had to do with agriculture. You mentioned it in your presentation. Do they allow any agricultural farming through rent or lease? Is there wide open fields that would be beneficial to Feed America?
No, we don't authorize agricultural use of the national forest. So we truly are forest management geared. So there's not the opportunity to say, manage row crops or hay.
So
or
we're gonna
anything
grow
like
trees, and trees is it?
that. We grow trees and trees is what it is. And I'll tell you, with this forest plan, there is an over intent to increase the amount of acreage that we are harvesting, much because of the reasons that you point out of those forests being, really our forests across the national forest are of a relatively even age. So much of our forest is at that 80 to 120 age group, and that's not healthy to have just one age class within the forest. There's also, as you guys know, there's a much greater opportunity for economic impacts where we can provide a product that goes into primary manufacturing and secondary manufacturing in our community, much more so than, not to belittle our outdoor recreation industry, but there's a much greater economic impact when we can be a producer. So we acknowledge that as well.
Well, I'm tickled pink with your report. I got to looking at that and I said, well, I've never seen anything like that before, and got to going back and reading in your information. Wayne, this happened before you and I even became county commissioner last time that it was presented to the board, so I appreciate it. A lot of hard work, a lot of figures went together to do it, so thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Any other questions or comments? I just, Nicholas just had two quick ones. One's a macro. I look at this plan, it's very thorough, obviously. Monetarily, is this going to be fiscally funded by the federal government to implement this in an effective way? Because we always hear that through all the agencies, there's no money, there's no money, there's no money. So a plan without having the funding to support the implementation, it's just 2,000 pages.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what's unique to this planning cycle is we were asked specifically to look at that, is to consider what our budget and what our resources would allow us to be able to accomplish. So that's woven into that tier 1 and tier 2 objective. Really and truly, if our funding stays consistent with how it has, we should be able to meet those tier 1 objectives. And that's how this plan was designed, which is not the case of the 1985 plan that we've had and the revisions to it from 1995. Those were much more based on what could be accomplished as opposed to what was realistically financially viable. The other thing that we're quite excited about is there's a lot more support expected to be coming down for public lands, specifically for the U.S. Forest Service, in our response to wildfire mitigation and wildfire suppression. And as you guys know, as you guys know and live in this area, our risks to wildfire are really quite true. I think all of us were here in 2016. And then hopefully you also acknowledge too that the grandfathers made huge strides in being able to manage that. We've built up quite a program for prescribed burning and community protection, and we're excited to have a continued support for that. So we're really optimistic that all that's going to continue, that we can rise above what that tier 1 objective for fuels mitigation is as it's spelled out.
That's I appreciate the information, Nicholas. One thing on a micro level, because we get calls about it, TDA gets calls about it, is Brown Mountain Overload. We've had a problem up there for as long as I can remember with graffiti, trash. You know, we used to have volunteers to be able to pick the trash up, things like that. You know, or Boy Scouts or whatnot. Some of that's fallen wayside. So, you know, we've got our folks up at the convenience sites up Jonas Ridge servicing that, but they're overwhelmed. And then the graffiti aspect, you know, we just still get some complaints. We do what we can, and we don't have the staff to keep it maintained up there. Obviously, I'm involved with TDA too. We sent a private firm up there to clean it up, cut down things, mow it, make it look nice. But you know, that's not a long-term solution. So I didn't know if there was any way we could, you know, team up with you at the Forest Service, because obviously your property We want to work together to see if we can come up with just a long-term solution to get this fixed. And I know funding's been a problem in the past, and that's why I was asking about funding overall. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so as you guys are aware, Brown Mountain Overlook is on U.S. Forest Service property, but it's operated by the county through a land use agreement. And that's quite historically accurate. The reason that that's in the county's hand for management is because we just haven't had the funding or the support to be able to do that. Now we have made phenomenal strides with our volunteers and partners, and been working quite closely with Ed over the past several years for the management of Brown Mountain Overlook. I don't know exactly yet how our support is expected to come down under this transportation or infrastructure bill. But specifically things like recreation access are called out. So while I don't have the details of saying, yeah, I know we're gonna have support coming down the pike for it, there's a lot of messaging that we should be able to. That said, I'm happy to start talking with y'all at any point about that, and as soon as we have a clearer picture of what it looks like, I am more than happy to start prioritizing not only at Brown Mountain Overlook, but across the county what y'all would like to see for improved recreation access.
Nicholas, thank you. Any other questions, comments for Nicholas? Great presentation. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to item number 4, VEDIC presentation, update on FY 2021 activities presented by Sherry Long, our VEDIC chair. Hey, Sherry.
Good afternoon. Sherry and Surrey are really good.
I was going to say,
together.
Sherry tried to answer.
Yeah, it happens in my office every day. Good afternoon, and thank y'all for having me here today. And thank you for your support of VEDIC over the years, and your chair sits on our board, so disclaimer. I wanted to let you know a little bit about what's gone on in VEDIC this year, and particularly when, you hit the button? There we go. This has been a rough year for business. We all know that. It's difficult for small businesses to stay in business. And one of the great things about VEDIC is that they are in it for the long haul. And the commitment that they've made to the small business loans in the region is excellent. I just wanted to share with you a little bit of the information. In 2021, we made 22 loans. Same number of loans that we made the year before. The difference is that we also had some Appalachian Regional Commission, which is the ARC funds, and we loaned almost a little over $900,000 as opposed to a little less than $600,000 the year before. Of the loans we made last year, 10 of them were in Burke County. So there again, we've got the majority of our loans are being made in Burke County. Matter of fact, almost half. There we go. I've done something again. One of the things is, one of the things that's really important that I wanted to let you know is that our total loan production to date, we have made 149 loans since the inception of VEDIC, and the total loan production is a little over $7 million. The great thing, and most banks would love to be able to describe this, is that we've had a 4.7% of our loans, which are 7 out of 149, have gone into default. So if you think about the margin of loans that we're making, one of the ways you can qualify, the only way you can qualify for a VEDIC loan is that you have to be turned down by another lending institution. So these are small business loans that have got something, have not enough history, not enough capital, something that what the bank, when they look at the underwriting, doesn't allow them to make a loan. But they have come to VEDIC. They work with our great staff. We've got Carrie and Eddie Jcpc in our office, and they actually work to make sure that the business plans are done right and that the businesses stay afloat. Our loan loss since inception is 1.8%, which is a little over $126,000 that we have not been able to get back yet. And when I say yet, that doesn't mean that we will not get it back. We have one of the things that the VEDIC board and the underwriting committee looks at is how can we collateralize the loans, and we have liens. There's one loan in particular that we've got a judgment against, and when they try to sell it, we will get our money back. It's just that we don't have it now. So there's $126,500 that could be in our books if all of our loans had been successful. wanted to report a little bit about the Golden Leaf Fund. As y'all are aware, a few years ago, Golden Leaf came into town and said, what kind of projects would you like to do? One of the projects that was selected was they provided $250,000 as a revolving loan to VEDIC to loan to small businesses in Burke County. We have churned that money, and currently the value of that loan fund is $709,481. That's including the interest that we have recouped on that loan since the program started. So that $250,000 investment is still churning and being reloaned to businesses only in Burke County, and currently the value of that loan pool is $709,000. Valdez received a rural center grant, a much smaller grant of $125,000. That revolving loan fund is still currently active, and it's got a value of almost $375,000. So that's just to show you that we're good stewards of the money, that the money is being loaned out and repaid so that we can loan it to additional businesses. This is something that we're very proud of. Of the 149 loans that we have made, 64 of them were to minority owners, which is 43% of the loan portfolio. And this is typically an underserved business ownership priority, and some of the banks and some of the other ones, lending institutions don't do that well. But 43% of our loans have been made to minorities, and so we're very proud of that. Also, in 2019, we wrote a grant to the Appalachian Regional Commission. They provided $100,000, and of that $100,000 that we received in 2019, $90,000 has been loaned out, and the other $10,000 has been pledged. We just haven't closed the loan yet. So we're using federal money to supplement some of the local money that we have so that we can spread the money out further. We've also applied for another $100,000 for the 22 cycle, and we are waiting for an award from Washington, D.C. to confirm that we've received those funds. But that would also capitalize the loan account. All of these loan funds go back into loaning. It's not administrative monies at all. All the ARC monies, all the other monies from the grants that we've received have not paid salaries. They have actually paid or loaned the money out to other business owners in the community. Our current loan portfolio, you say, how many have you done? You know, we've done 149. How many are currently active? We have 56, which we loaned out a little over $3 million, and the current balance is a little less than $2.2 million. So all of the loans are performing, as you can see there. We've got a good history with the loans. If you look at the jobs created or retained to date, you can see the summary of 805 jobs. Of those, 584 were in Burke County. That's 73% of all the jobs created through VEDIC have been for jobs in Burke County. Pandemic assistance. One of the great things that VEDIC was able to do, because we are a small lender, is we could pivot. A lot of the small businesses in the community applied for federal assistance, but they didn't have the money yet. And what the VEDIC board did is we made bridge loans. So those businesses that we knew were going to get federal money to be able to help them, but just had that small period of time that they couldn't keep the doors open or pay their employees because the money hadn't arrived yet, VEDIC stepped in and made those small business loans. They have since been repaid and they've gone back out in the community, but by doing that, we helped with 41 deferrals of a little over $90,000 worth of loans, and all of those businesses remained open. So that's a track record that very few lenders can say, and we're very proud of that, and it's mainly due to the staff, because the staff has been perfect in going out and working with the businesses and analyzing them. If they go out and they see that they've got something in their accounting or their tax system that needs help, they make recommendations and referrals, and they will also pay. The VEDIC board has some money, and we pay for part of the assistance that they need to get an accountant in to help them, or to make sure that all of their taxes are paid on time. And these are small businesses that are steady businesses and are in the community, and we're very proud of that. We're 100% municipality supported. The admin money that is paid in by our units of local government is what pays for our staff. Pays for Valdez. We're very fortunate. They provide office space for us for the board, for our employees to sit in, to stay there, use their copiers, use their meeting space, and the local governments that contribute make the difference and allow us to do this and not have to tap into the interest that we do receive from the loans. Goes back and gets loaned back out. It doesn't pay for our staff. So it's very important. As you can see from the board members that we've got your chair on, and we've got people from all over the county. And then your vice chairman is Tanya Stevenson, and Johnny Berry from Colony Springs is your treasurer, and Sherry Bradshaw is the secretary. And we have a loan review committee. That loan review committee meets once a month. Before any loan is ever taken to the board, it is thoroughly vetted from the committee, and there's some that do not get out of committee because we don't feel that the loan is something that should be approved from our agency. And of course, I said we have Jcpc, our executive director. She's wonderful. She is out in the community. She always has a smile on her face and is willing to help anyone that needs the help. And we have Eddie McGimsey, who used to be at the SBTC, and we have Chuck Mosley, who actually was the original director on staff. And all of the ones listed on the screen have committed funds this past year. Burke County, we really appreciate your support. The program couldn't run without the local governments and how well that they function together and how well the stewards of this money are. And I just wanted to thank you for our partnership, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have about VEDIC.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentation. Any questions or comments for Sherry?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Sherry, what a wonderful, remarkable report, and especially for Burke County. You already covered it a little bit, but I think it's just important for this board to recognize that y'all deserve a That a Boy award and That a Girl award for how great y'all have done. But almost 50% areas, so that's pretty strong. And as you mentioned, 584 employees, and I had 73 and a half, and I think you said 73, but again, 73%, and there's 9 other counties involved or cities or whatever, but we appreciate it. We thank you. It's a good job, and obviously Burke County is benefiting a great deal from it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Any other questions, comments? The last 2 years,
Yeah.
so everybody's at the table. So appreciate your work, appreciate the information. Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on, presented by our good friend Ed Phillips, Tourism Director.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful Burke County day outside. Before I get into the financials, I want to share some great news with you that I've just learned this week. Barbershop. If you haven't been to the Drexel Barbershop, the Southern Living magazine just came out a couple of days. Nations by city, not by county. And so it talks about located east of Asheville and northwest of Charlotte is Morganton, as well as a greenway for walking and biking. Be sure to stop by nearby Lake James State Park, Linville Gorge, and Table Rock to see the sights. So good news from them. And also the North Carolina, and last year's travel guide had Thermal Valley hang gliding in it with a big picture in the middle. And so that was a success story. This year on page 40, they have unsolved mysteries in North Carolina, and guess what? The Brown Mountain Lights are covered again. So we keep playing that story as long as we can. So successes this week on those, and a lot of those things come about because of our public relations activities when we meet with travel writers and editors and publishers and tell them about the great things there are to do here in Burke County, and they take notes, and eventually some of them get published. So the financial report for through December 21st, which was the midpoint in our fiscal year, which started last July. You can see that we collected $323,242.28 in occupancy tax. We also had miscellaneous income. That income came from participants in Our State magazine co-op that we actually billed those participants to work with us and advertise with us in that. And then our trolley revenue had a budget of $7,500, and we actually have collected $18,000 through the first 6 months of the fiscal year. And our trolley has been a very successful last year, for the calendar year last year, of almost $26,000 in revenue, and really it has caught on, and a lot of people are using the trolley. Our other expenses are in line with throughout the year. In my next budget report, the next time I come before you guys, we did just have a budget amendment because our revenues are running so far ahead. And we also added the miscellaneous revenue back into our budget for the rest of the fiscal year. As of December 31st, we had $556,776 in the bank. Part of those funds are reserved for the city of Morganton and the town of Valdez through our legislation that has those funds available for them. The city of Morganton had $28,101.58 that they had not drawn down. Drawdown from Morganton, and there will be a drawdown from Valdez here shortly. One of the things that's not in your packet, but I did want to mention, is the occupancy tax growth. Our budget for this fiscal year that we're in for occupancy tax was $600,000. Through the first 6 months, we have collected $440,000. So we are 2/3 of the way there in 6 months of our occupancy tax for the whole year. Why is that? We have a new hotel downtown that's been open about a year, be a year in March. It's doing very well. The demand for hotel rooms in Burke County has increased substantially. The Plaza Inn on exit 105, Highway 18 south, just south of the interstate, has been rebranded, has been renovated. Actually, the rooms are nice. And there's 60 manufacturing rooms. Demand for manufacturers is up. Also, the School of Science and Math. They're already using quite a bit of rooms here for meetings, recruitment, et cetera. And that's only going to increase as we get into the summer, this coming summer, for demand from School of Science and Math. So we have a strong, all the components of what drives room nights here are very strong, and we only see tremendous growth in the next fiscal year and beyond once we get through this pandemic. And we've done very well through the pandemic with hotel.
Any questions or comments? I think you did too good a job, Ed.
Finally.
And one quick thing is, I did want to say, and you and I talked about this, we've grown so exponentially in occupancy tax and fill rate, looks like we're about can sustain another hotel at this point.
Yeah. If we don't have another hotel, we're always behind the 8 ball. You know, which comes first, demand or supply? And demand for hotel rooms right now pretty quickly will outstrip our supply. And so there will be enough room for another hotel, I think, in the next maybe 9 months to a year. And we work hard to keep those full.
Absolutely.
And where is that demand coming from?
The demand for the hotels, for the hotel rooms? Well, it comes from leisure travel, the business travel, the manufacturers, the educational aspect of North Carolina School of Science and Math. There's also quite a bit of demand through what I call medical field education. So we have people that come here to go to Broughton as interns, quite a few, also at the hospital. Leisure travel is particularly strong in the summer and the fall, of course. Then in the wintertime, we have a lot more business travel. Also, the manufacturers that are engineers and architects that are coming to work in those plants is quite high now.
Do you market that, or they find out about us?
We don't market to business travelers per se, but we do everything else, including special events like weddings. I mean, we've become a huge wedding destination now. This past fall, there were 2 and 3 weddings at every venue in Burke County every weekend. So that's very strong. And we used our trolley for a lot of those too. So, and that business, I mean, like Hidden Hill, Silver Creek, Silver Fork Winery, their wedding venue, they're booked out this year. They have no availability this year. So it's a lot of different reasons. All tourists there. Yeah.
Ed, thank you. Without objection, gentlemen, this item will remain on the agenda. This will move us to section number 4, scheduled public hearings. This will be presented, first item, by BDI Allen Wood project, It's About Time. No, it's about time you get up there, Alan. It's about time, the name of the project.
Well, just a little tongue in cheek, having a little fun with that one, guys. Thank you for the opportunity to present, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. It's project It's About Time is set to be a 500,000 square foot building to be built at the Burke Business Park. I think you had in your package, it shows lots A, B, and C, which is roughly 23.6 acres of the park. that the company is finalizing financing. It is their intent to build the 500,000 square foot. It appears to be all at one time rather than phased, as had been discussed previously. So that makes the investment, it looks like it's going to be somewhere between $33 and $37 million, since they're going ahead with the full build out. They have 4 contractors that have bid on this, and they're in the process of determining which ones they're going to work with. They're all either local or have done work here recently. There is some still infrastructure that is needed to bring the water, sewer, et cetera, to the lot lines. There's a Golden Leaf grant pending for $639,000. That will be heard next Monday. I feel really good about that, and want to thank Sherry Long for helping push that through. We found out about it late, so it was a scramble to get that ready. One of the things that has to happen is the water tank being complete. The logos are going up. That has to be done because we're also going after rural infrastructure money to do the sewer extension, and that's $503,000. So by the timing of that, the rural infrastructure grant would be submitted in March and then approved in April. This is a client choice as far as electrical goes. It could be Rutherford Electric, REMC, the City of Morganton, voice around those 3 companies. Also, this will drive gas out to the park. At this point in time, our best guess is that late spring would be time when we break ground on this, and it's probably a 12-month build. Been asleep, you understand there have been shortages across all the way around the board, steel and roofing materials, but the most of, if not all of the contractors that have bid on this are going 50 to 55 weeks to completion. So it's about time, and we're very happy to, one of the good things is, if you'll look at the map we gave you, driving that sewer out to the lot line, the way we're taking it, we'll take care of Pad D, which will also hold about 200,000 square feet. And that's the second most desirable pad, and there is some interest in that as well. So we're sort of trying to double up on that on our spend, so we don't have to go back and look for more funds again for the next project. The company will be creating over 3 years 72 jobs. The full build out would be 100 jobs over a 5-year period. That probably they'll exceed that timeline since they're going ahead with all of it at once. And as I said, that 25 million I had is bumped up to, my guess is 35 to 40, depending on what it costs to upfit the building once it's complete.
Alan, thank you. Great presentation. All of us are obviously excited about this opportunity, and a long waiting on this opportunity. Gentlemen, you've heard this particular presentation. Any questions or comments for Alan?
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple on your presentation, Alan, on the paragraph 2 on page 64, which you stated in your presentation, 72 jobs. On paragraph 4, it says 100 jobs, and since we're trying to get grants for that stuff, shouldn't those two numbers be the same?
Well, it goes with the 3-year number, which is the 72. So that's the reason that they look at the 3-year number, as opposed to if they go on any of the state's numbers, they will, if they go with a JDIG job developer that we're using here is the 72, because that's the 3-year cycle that we're dependent upon.
Well, I think that's the question. Why did we go with 72 and the city of Morganton's going with 100? I did not hear you. 64. I'm just thinking, if I'm somebody reviewing this to grant.
That's a
money-
different project.
Yeah, that's Project Bravo, Commissioner Taylor. That's the next one he will be presenting.
Okay,
Yeah, that's, the 72 is for this first project, and the 100 will be for the, second presentation we're gonna roll into here in just a minute.
why are they together? Okay, second question. They have 5 years to build, and we're going to donate probably 1.5 million in property to them.
It would be second to whoever does the major financing, but we would hold a second deed of trust until the building is completed.
But if they don't, what is our recourse? What do we do?
If they don't complete it, we hold the deed of trust, we would repossess it. We would foreclose on it.
Okay, I did this statement somewhere that it says that basically, you know, what will happen if you don't fulfill your end of the bargain. And I think we usually do that in one form or another. So, Mr. Chairman, I believe that's.
Procedure is in pretty much any situation.
That's right, and the county has deeds of trust now on 4 or 5 different projects. It's always the big stick that the county carries.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. All right. Any other questions or comments for Alan on this project? It's about time. I love saying that. BDI Building Reuse Grant for Project Bravo. Mr. Allen Wood again.
And I will say it's a little unusual that these all fall at Commerce and Economic Development Partnership didn't have hearings pretty much the entire month of December, so they hit all of this the first part of January. So that's why we're hitting all of these at one time and trying to push them. They will be looking for a $200,000, that's what was requested, up to a $200,000 building reuse. And they're looking, word I got is a $75,000 on the City of Morganton's agenda, February the 25th, asking them to provide that match. The 1NC requires a 25% local match. I'm asking would be 50% for a period of 3 years, and it would start after the investment is made. It is estimated that the county's portion of that would come to their taxable. The City of Morganton's, it's estimated, would be about $35,055, once again, based on those same parameters. These jobs are paying significantly above the county average, about $62,000 each. And the Infrastructure Authority's February 17th agenda, and the governor is considering the 1NC at this time.
Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. We'll move on to item number.
Company to Burke County. They will be moving into the 410 Hogan Street building. They closed in December of 20, as a matter of fact. This company would be creating 100 new jobs. The City of Morganton, I've asked them to be the applicant on this one. We would need if we get the full amount, the match would be $5,000 each. The COG would receive their administrative portion, and that's what the grant covers, % match. The breakdown, if the taxable investment, which is estimated to be $5.2 million, is fully taxable, then the county's portion of the match would be $54,210, and the City of Morganton is $44,460. Those are based on their current tax rates. this is a strong company, and I think they would be a good addition to our community.
Thank you, Alan. Gentlemen, you've heard this presentation on Project Highlander. Any questions or comments about this particular item?
Mr. Chairman, let me ask a question that's ready to go.
Logos are going on as we speak. I think Ed's already gone, but Hope and Ed were out there Thursday and decided where the logos would go on the tank. There was a little bit of electrical work that had to be done on the pump, and we expect them to be filling that tank probably this week and testing it to make sure no leaks and everything's working properly. And at that point in time, we'll be able to close that grant out.
What was the price of that water tank? Do you recall
I'm sorry?
the price of the water tank that we?
It was, we received, I think it was $1.9 million grant money, and the total bill was like $2.3 million. So we had, I think we provided, our estimated match was roughly $400,000 for a $2.3 million water tank.
Yeah, and we own the water tank.
The water tank would be, the way it was agreed to is once it's completed, it would be the city of Morganton to take over the operations and management of that tank as a part of their system.
So we don't gain any money back that we put into the water tank. The city of Morganton will.
The way it was established, the match would be paid from the first tax investment that comes off the business when it goes to, when it is built and starts being taxed. So the way this is set up, when the building is built, the land is the incentive. So the first year that building goes on the tax roll, it is 100% taxable. Whatever money comes in first offsets the match that the county provided for the water tank.
Okay.
So the county's net outlay is zero on that.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Then, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
No rest for the weary. All right, gentlemen, this brings us to section number 5, consent agenda. Burke County Public Schools, presentation of financial data for the period ending December 31st, 2021, presented by our good friend Keith Lawson, Burke County Public Schools Finance Officer. Hey, Keith.
Good evening, gentlemen. For a couple of you, I'm afraid this will be repetitive. You've heard it very recently, but I'll do my best to inform you all of Burke County Public Schools' financial position. December year-to-date, halfway through our fiscal year. Our first schedule contained in your packet is illustrates our annual revenues. I'll draw your attention to the first two columns under the heading annual. The first column, previous, being our previous year's revenues in sum total, which were $116.8 million. The next column, current forecast, represents our estimated revenues for this current fiscal year through June 30. As you can see, the state, thank goodness, for the first time in about 3 years, shows an increase in revenues. That is representative of the fact that for the first time in years, we have a state budget. And contained in that state budget was a 2.5% wage increase for all of our employees, or a $13 an hour minimum wage, whichever was the greater of. Our next line item, which is highlighted, you will see is federal. Typically, those are relatively flat year to year. What this represents in the previous year, this current year, and in the years all the way until September 2024 are our ESSER funds. ESSER funds are the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Funds, or the federal COVID money. Burke County Public Schools is set to receive and has received $35+ million. We spent approximately $11 million of those in the previous year and anticipate another $20.7 million in expenditures this year. That primarily consists of air quality improvement projects, which has been at the forefront of our initiatives in order to provide a safe environment for children and staff to return to school. Of the $35 million total, about $18.5 million of that are air quality improvement projects that either have been completed, are in process, or are planned all the way through September of 2024. The next line items are local, and I'll say cumulatively local school nurses, charter schools, fines and forfeitures are all funds that flow to us through you all, the county commissioners. Next is receivables, which is a relatively small number in the scheme of things. That's just simply any receivables at whatever point in time may be outstanding from our schools. Next is special revenue funds. As you can see, that particular fund is down year to year in anticipated revenues. The primary impactor there is the fact that Burke County Public Schools has handed over the operations, as you all are well aware, of our before and after school program to the YMCA. Total revenues the previous year were at $116.8 million. Our current forecast is $127.6. The two impactors there again, the state budget and the increase there, as well as our emergency relief funds from the federal government. Our next two columns, December year to date, is halfway through the year, and I'll draw your attention to the percent change column. You'll see state's 5%. That's pretty much representative of exactly where we expected to be, given a 2.5% wage increase and on average a 5% increase in employer benefits, which compounds on top of that wage increase. Next, the federal funds, again, the ESSER funding, you can see is up substantially, 236%. That's those air quality improvement projects. Another large portion of those expenditures are PPE and the addition of 11 school nurses. During the COVID period, we've tried to maintain one school nurse per school due to the demands, obviously, as a result of COVID. We traditionally have staffed school nurses at a level of 14. We currently have 25. We're paying for those additional nurses with ESSER funding. One of the very few initiatives that we have undertaken with ESSER funds, those being non-recurring funds, it's one of the few initiatives we have taken that is recurring. We do have a longer range plan, hopefully to deal with those nurses beyond September of 2024. Our second schedule, which you all may find a little more meaningful and relative to you all and our impact on the county, is our local budget. At the top of the schedule, you can see for comparative purposes, previous year's spending. I'll draw your attention to the column 2021. As you can see, $16.3 million in expenditures with a $510,000 contribution to fund balance. That's last fiscal year. Now, if we may, over to the far right, just outside of the bold highlighted box, you can see previous and difference. So if we look at our total spending halfway through the year locally versus our previous and the difference, I'll draw your attention to the 6XXX line, instructional support. You can see there's a $500,000 increase. Again, looking to the far right, a $500,000 increase in spending year over year. That is the category that supports facilities maintenance, custodial supplies, cleaning, etc. The reason for that significant increase year over year is twofold. One, this year, thank goodness, we've been in session, so kids have been in schools, which obviously has resulted in facility operations being slightly increased. A greater factor that we're all feeling when we go to the gas pump or to the grocery store, and that's inflation. Consumer price index is up 7% through December of 21. That impacts specifically on Burke County Public Schools local operations. Energy is up 29.3%. Annually, that is a $261,000 impact on our local budget. Electricity, 6.3, that's $113,000 impact. Gasoline, that primarily operates our activity buses, our maintenance vehicles, etc., is up 49.6%, representing a $111,000 increase in our yearly spending. And then commodities, less food and energy, are up 10.7%. That would be custodial supplies, that'd be building materials, maintenance materials, etc. And that represents a $128,000 increase. So I think most importantly what I want to stress today is that inflation alone is having a $600,000 impact on our local budget this year, which causes me painfully to revise our estimated anticipated increase in fund balance yet again this year to probably at minimum a break even, if not a slight usage of fund balance. And I say that to preface what I've said in previous years, given the fact that we have the ESSER funding and we've relied on that very heavily when we've been able to substitute things in our local budget to get us some relief. For instance, specialized custodial supplies is a great example. But even with that, again, inflation is eating all of that up. So we're looking at, rather than, we've for 3 consecutive years held our request to the county commission flat, had anticipated in doing so all the way until 2024. I'm not into the meat of the budget season just yet, so I haven't fleshed everything out, but we could come to you, the county commissioners, for our next year's budget request for a slight increase rather than flat, and also maybe some combination of fund balance allocation on our side with a small increase from you, the county commission. Not saying that is the case, just want to forewarn you and give you a heads up that that's a possibility. And with that being said, I will certainly be happy to entertain any questions.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentation from Keith. Any questions or comments?
In the 7% inflationary cost that you've got going on, how much of the ESSER funds can eat into that inflationary cost?
Well, we had anticipated this prior year, the fiscal year just completed, basically a break even for that year, with holding our request to you, the county commission, flat, and with a flat state budget last year. We contributed $500,000, $510,000 to our fund balance last year. Thus, my forecast for this year, at least $500,000 in relief using ESSER funds was a result last year, with a $614,000 anticipated inflationary factor on our local budget. We're looking at $100,000 plus possible increased need in funding for the next fiscal year, 22-23. We'll again rely on ESSER any and every way possible without with staying true to the intent of ESSER funding and by no misappropriation. Again, the perfect example, the best example I have, and there's many, is, all custodial supplies are purchased from local budget. Well, during COVID, we've purchase specialized custodial supplies that are particularly effective on COVID, and as a result have relieved our local budget. Federal government has no issue with that, and we look for that at every opportunity. But again, inflation is gobbling up everything that we can possibly save by those efforts.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Carson. Commissioner Taylor?
In your report there, you probably answered my question, and that question was how much the fuel bill, the price of diesel fuel, has affected the bus operation of it, and I expect if I had to guess, probably about half of that 600,000 you just mentioned went for fuel increase.
Well, locally, and again, the only thing we fuel locally out of our local budget are activity buses and maintenance vehicles. That impact at 49.6% inflation rate is 111,000. When it comes to our yellow buses that pick our students up every morning and deliver them home safely in the evenings, we run over 100 buses a day. Fortunately, that's in the state budget. And the state has assured us at this point that they're going to absorb and fund us at whatever level that impacts us. Given, I haven't looked at that number specifically in our state budget, but given the fact that it's a $111,000 impact locally, I'd say it's probably close to $500,000 impact to our state budget.
I would say you'd be close. Anybody farming and buying, 2 to 500 gallon to 250 gallons a ton, you're finding you're paying half again almost for diesel fuel. Last summer I bought it for $1.60, and December I filled up and it was right at $2.70. It's more than $1.25 a gallon more. So, but the thing that we ought to deal with and put into our equation is they're claiming it'll be $6 before the year ends, so it's going to be a whole lot higher than now. So, for whatever that's worth. Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments for Keith? And Keith, as we talked about in last week's, when we met last week, this was an odd year as far as inflation goes. This is the largest inflation increase in decades. So we don't anticipate that happening again this year. We should see that alleviate for, what I do and what you do is all the forecast I see. So this shouldn't, I don't anticipate that we having to revisit that, hopefully for a year from now. But we do understand, those are uncontrollable. But hopefully this year we'll be back to 1 to 2 to 3%.
Let's certainly hope so.
Great presentation.
Thank you very
Keith,
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. All right, item number 2 under consent agenda, Western Piedmont Community College, presentation of financial data for the period ending December 31st, 2021. This will be presented by Monica Arney, Controller. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having me here today. Sandy Holman had an unexpected change in her schedule, so she is with our Board of Trustees this afternoon. So I was happy to get to come and give you guys a brief summary of our finances through December 31st, 2021. This is the midpoint of our fiscal year for 2022. First, we'll look at our state funds. While the General Assembly had passed a budget for this biennium, we did not officially obtain our budget until January. So these numbers are still reflective of $13,330,000, with additional allocations of $1 million, brought our total state budget to $14,353,000. Through December 31st, 2021, we spent just under $7 million, which is 48.6% of our state budget. This does not include the items encumbered, only actual expenditures. The next 3 columns highlighted in blue represent the county budget and the actual expenditures through December 31st, 2021. Our current budget is $2,600,000 for operations. We have received $1,300,000 of our budget and spent $1,178,000 through the midpoint, utilizing 14.4% of our budget. The final three columns show our institutional budget. We had budgeted $9,700,000 for institutional funds. These include categories such as student financial aid, grants, self-supporting courses, and our bookstore. Also, we will utilize a good portion of the federal money, CARES and the American Recovery Plan grant funds. Most of these accounts are restricted in nature as to their designations. Our total combined college budget for the year of 2021-2022 is $26,707,000, of which we have spent just under $13 million. That is 48.4%, which is consistent with prior years. On our next slide, we'll show a breakdown of expenditure categories for the county expenses. The major expenditure categories include salaries and benefits, which is 26.5%, utilities at 24.7%, and contracted services at 16%. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions or comments?
You've heard Monica's presentation, gentlemen. Any questions or comments for her?
Mr. Chairman, not about the report, an excellent report. How's enrollment?
It is down. It is under what we would have hoped for, but we're hoping that with additional marketing efforts, we've really put forth a lot more social media posts recently. So we're hoping that that's going to help us get our numbers back up before the fall.
Anything we can do as a board to encourage attendance or anything?
Well, I think the support of the county in general has always been fantastic, and so we really appreciate that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Obviously, as supporters and as a trustee at Western Piedmont, that's a good point, Commissioner Taylor. We committed $1 million to the skills trades building,
Yes.
and so that will help drive enrollment, and that's going to be a regional center, which should definitely help FTE and seat count, however you want to put it. And then the enrollment, as far as the numbers that are how far we're down, is pretty middle of the pack when you look at the other 58 community colleges throughout the state. You have some anomalies when you get to Wake Tech and some of the others, but those are extremely large institutions. But if you look at the rural institutions, we're pretty much on par for the course. Would you say?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Monica? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Moving on to item number 3, I will turn this over to Madam Clerk, reappointment to BDI, presented by Mrs. Kay Drong.
Thank
Hello.
you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, our Board of Directors for calendar year 2022, and to reappoint Jim Toner to seat number 3 at large to complete the remainder of a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2024.
Questions or comments on this item, gentlemen? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Madam Clerk, appointment to LEPC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to appoint Davina Studley to seat number 5, representing public health on the local emergency planning committee to complete an unexpired term ending January 31st, 2024, and to grant an exception to the residency provision of Article 4, Section 2-88A of the Code of Ordinances.
Any questions or comments on this item, gentlemen?
Let's see, which item there?
That was item number 4.
4?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, there is a question. Madam Clerk, I noticed in her resume she lives in Sylvia. I also noticed in her resume that she intends to relocate to Burke County. My question is, does the rules and regulations allow you to be a part of a committee before you relocate?
Well, she is an employee of the health department.
What does the rules say? I didn't have time to look it up. You didn't either, did you?
Well, she is replacing Emily Petite.
Well, the only difference here is if the rules state that they must live here, we need to rewrite that to say upon her arrival as a resident of Burke County that she is accepted as part of that, is the reason for the question.
What you're saying, Madam,
Obviously, we don't
She
have
is
the
a
answer.
county employee.
so Madam Clerk, that's what you're saying, we're replacing a county employee or a health department employee with a health department employee, so she does qualify as the rules
Yes.
exist.
Now, I did not notice that. I figured she would be relocating, but I didn't see that. So her address is a Silva address right now, so that's why I requested an exception to the residency provision until she does relocate.
Her resume said that she intended to move to Burke County. So
I figured she didn't want to drive from Silva every day, but since her address on it stated Silva, I requested an exception to the residency provision.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, the board does have the ability to waive that requirement upon occasion.
Thank
To
you.
waive it, you have to have a sentence waiving it. You can't just assume we waived it. But that's what you would do by putting a disclaimer as soon as she moved or transferred to Burke County, she would be on that board. Either way would.
At this point, we can just, waive that
Waive that requirement, yes. sir.
waive that requirement and leave her nomination on.
Yes, and I have that as part of the motion
Yes.
to approve her,
Yes,
that waiver.
so
Yes.
So we're good?
we're good. Any other questions or comments? Well, then, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Madam Clerk, moving on to appointment to Jcpc.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is a request to appoint Taylor Hyatt, who works for the Burke County United Way, to seat number 18, who represents the United Way or another nonprofit, to the Jcpc to complete the remainder of a term ending June 30th, 2022.
Gentlemen, any questions or comments on this item?
Looks good.
Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
And Madam Clerk, we have one more. Appointment of TDA Chair. I'm not gonna let you go yet.
Okay, just, I had to get one more. Okay, this is a request to reappoint Chairman Scott Mulley as the Chair of the Burke County Tourism Development Authority for 2022. Appears we should have done this in December, but we didn't.
Gentlemen, any questions or comments? There being none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item number 7, Community Development, Part-F Grant Extension Acknowledgement, presented by Planning Director Alan Glynes. Hey, Alan.
Hey there, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We would like to remove two resolutions that were 2021-15 and 2021-16 that were from further consideration. They were resolutions to withdraw from Part F. And as you remember, in the meeting last fall, we had a lot of interest from members of the community and yourselves included to seek an extension of the Part F grant, which was granted to Burke County. So we're real excited to keep that grant going. And therefore, we just need to remove those resolutions that were sitting still on the waiting list, if you will, to be resolved. So we would resolve them by just kind of rescinding and removing them from further consideration. We're making good progress on that Part F grant, including lining up some survey work that will be required for the trail alignment, as well as meeting with an appraiser who will be willing to work with us to determine the value of some of that trail easement area. So that's all I have on that.
Gentlemen, questions, comments for Alan on this particular item?
Do process needs to be done.
Absolutely. There being none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 8, community development, also presented by Alan, Jonas Ridge Convenience Site Construction Documents, thankfully.
Thank you. We have a master plan that will be brought up here in just a minute. Let's see here, if I can help with that, maybe. We're finding that. We would like to contract with McGill Associates and Equinox Environmental to develop construction documents for the convenience center up at Jonas Ridge and the Cranberry Bog site. The design team, this is the team, was McGill and Equinox. They were selected after an RFQ process back in 2020. A master plan was developed by the end of 2020 and presented to you all. We've got it here. It's a beautiful site, and eventually we'll take care of the whole site, but right now we'd like to just work on the convenience center area here, which includes this access driveway and a two-way access point to enter the convenience site. And then there will be a high-quality water treatment for this, to treat any water coming off our site back into the Cranberry Bog. It's really important. That's a Southern Appalachian rare plant community. We want to keep the high-quality waters and trout waters intact. So what we'd be asking for is design money to take care of phase 1. And the phase 1 is the convenience center, this sort of area in the oval. And we would make the park development a phase 2. We'd split it over 2 budget years and bring something back to you in the next budget year, we hope. If the funds are set aside for the design work, we would like to get this project in this year's budget. So we'd be bringing something for Cranberry Bog Convenience Center, Jonas Ridge, in this budget year. Thank you.
Alan, thank you. Gentlemen, any questions or comments on this item?
Mr. Chairman, under budgetary effect, said the cost was $35,000, wanted to spread it over 2 years.
Beg your pardon, sir, that's just for the design for phase 1, and that would be the request for this year, not spread over 2 years. Beg your pardon on that.
So the total cost is $70,000?
Well, for the design of this phase 1, we expect it to be in the range of $35,000. Now, next year, when we work on a design for phase 2, the park, we'll bring that estimate to you for those design services at that time.
So just so you'll know, the total cost is going to be more than $35,000. Correct?
What was the total cost?
Total cost, you said if half of it was this year is 35, next year we will add an additional 35, which the total cost to do the work on that project is going to be $70,000.
It could very well be that amount. Yeah.
All I have, Mr. Chairman.
Alan, how much contact we have with the community up there to show them what we're actually doing? Have we gone out to the community and held community meetings?
In 2020, I understand there was a fair bit of community feedback about a plan out here, and folks were happy about the result of having the convenience center and the park. We haven't gone back to share with them that we'll just be doing the convenience center this year. But as long as I think we're making progress in that area, I believe the community will be happy to see the improvement at the convenience site. So it did have a lot of community feedback at the time of the plan development.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes, sir.
believe we've got a kind of a billboard up there trying to keep the community aware of what steps we're in, where we're headed, and what's coming next. So they can keep up with them that way.
I think the community has been excited about this project, but we still get the proverbial call about where we're at and when is it going to, I think you're getting excited to see something, so I'm in favor of us moving as quickly as we can.
And once again, through no fault of our own, it was more of a legal issue trying to get that land acquisition than anything else, as JR's worked diligently on that for an extended period of time. And so we all understand that. I would say, you know, probably after we get to the spring, fall, maybe get maybe go to the HOA at Ginger Cake or Jonas Ridge, whatever, and we'll come up with some type of community event where we can give a live update with real numbers. We should have at that point some type of pretty solid estimate, time frame, and cost. And so that would be something that I'd recommend. I think the rest of the board would recommend too, because, you know, and Wayne's mentioned Jonas Ridge before in prior meetings, you know, we need to give them some attention and make sure we get this to the finish line. So any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Alan, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make one, Johnny's comment, which is a good comment. I don't know how, Johnny, you know how they get their news. Do they have a newspaper in Jonas Ridge?
They do not.
They do not.
I have no idea, that's the reason I was asking.
Yeah, seems like we need to be doing a little communicating up there. So,
They do have, as Brian mentioned that, because I'm up there fairly frequently, more so in the warmer months, but at the convenience site, we have updated maps. And, you know, there's really not a paper. A lot of them get the Morganton News Herald. And then, you know, things, we can probably do some radio updates as well, but I think an in-person meeting up there would be quite appreciated. So I think that'd be probably the most effective way to do that. A good point from all the commissioners. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 9. Audit contract for FY 2021-2022, presented by our Deputy County Manager and Finance Director, Ms. Margaret Pierce.
Good afternoon. North Carolina General Statute 15934 requires we have our accounts audited annually by a certified public accountant. Loudermilk Church has presented us with a proposal to continue services with us with a small increase. $800 increase is requested. This is the first increase in 2 years, and we're still down over $11,000 from where we were in the past in 18-19, so we've continued to do what we can to hold those costs in line. Some of this is related to the additional single audit services due to the CARES Act funds and the American Rescue Plan funds. Each of those requires a single audit along with several other fundings we receive.
Okay, gentlemen? You've heard Margaret. Any questions or comments on this item? Without objection, then this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Margaret. All right, moving on to item number 10. It's time for Danny Eisenhower, Tax Administrator, Tax Collection Report for January 2022.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. The tax collection report, I do not have anything together yet. We are waiting on the VTS system to do some updates, hopefully in the next day or so. And the same will be for the release refund report.
Okay. So item number 10 and 11, we're waiting on numbers. And item number 12, agreement to, and those items will remain on the consent agenda, and you'll have those numbers furnished to us beforehand.
Yes, sir.
Without objection, then, those items will remain on the consent agenda. Items 10 and 11. Item number 12, tax agreement to conduct reappraisal reviews.
As all you gentlemen know, I brought to you the need for reappraisal company to do, an outside company to do a lot of our reappraisal. So we have put out requests for proposals. We've reviewed those and come up with Pearson Appraisal being the best suited to Burke County and also the lowest bidder. At $32 per parcel, $35,000 to help us develop the schedule of values. And recommend that the board approve Pearson Appraisal for this project.
Okay, Danny. Y'all heard Danny's presentation on this item. Any questions or comments for Danny? Well, there being none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Danny.
Gentlemen. Have a good day.
Hey, you too, sir. This brings us to Section 6, items for decision. There are none. So we'll move on to item, section 7, reports. 2021 summary of accomplishments. This will be a placeholder that will be presented by Brian Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lance has been doing a lot of the heavy work assembling, and Ms. Kay is doing the revisions and editing work and bringing things to his attention, and we look forward to presenting this to you and the citizens of Burke County at our next meeting.
Thank you, Brian. Well, without objection, gentlemen, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to section number 8, is there any other discussion items to be brought before the board, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I did send you out a couple of emails that you should have received maybe yesterday or today regarding upcoming dates for NCACC, our Raleigh trips to meet legislators, etc. Also, Burke County, District 13 and District 15 in Polk County. The district meeting, which Chairman Mulley's in over District 13 is the chair of that district, will be held in Burke County, so we'll be hosting that one. Kay is working out a place for us to do that, so I would hope that each of you gentlemen could attend the district meeting when that does occur in May, I think.
I believe the district's meeting's in April, and then the county assembly days in May.
May 3rd.
Going backwards, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
So you should have got those on your email. If you would, just take a look at those and be sure and put those on your calendars.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the reminder. Any other items, gentlemen? Okay, there being no other items, upcoming meetings, we do have our board retreat coming up. This will be held here in this meeting rooms beginning at 9 a.m. on February 3rd, this Thursday. And also breakfast will be served at 8:30 a.m. Then we'll follow it up with another day of retreat on February 4th, which will be this Friday here in the same room. Breakfast at 8:30, meeting beginning at 9 a.m. Our February 15th regular meeting will be here at 6 p.m. And I would stress and plead with people to please spay or neuter your pets. And as we sing from the song hymnal here, please don't litter and secure your loads. We're still receiving lots of feedback from the community. There's a lot of trash on the road, so if you see it, please pick it up or report it. We're doing the best we can, and we're going to try to implement a more thorough plan to see if we can't get this cleaned up. So that being said, gentlemen, with no further business today, I'll accept a motion for adjournment. So moved. All those in favor? Motion carried, 5-0. Madam Clerk, thank you.